everyone, and welcome into this episode of the Bear Down Buzz podcast, a victory Monday as the Bears were victorious over the Los Angeles Rams. Joining me, as always, is Joe and Isaac, myself, Eli here, once again on the Bear Down Buzz podcast. Gentlemen, as I mentioned earlier, a victory Monday as the Bears improved to a record of 2-2. We'll just kind of start things off, and Joe, I will start with you. Your overall thoughts on kind of a weird one against Los Angeles, but we did pull out the win and improved to 2-2. What were your thoughts on this win over the Los Angeles Rams, Joe?
I think that we did. It was a good game for the most part. I mean, there was a couple things on defense that weren't too great, but overall we played good enough on defense to hold them to 18 points. Obviously, this is the 10th game in a row where the Bears have allowed 21 or less, which is the best streak in the NFL. They also won in their home game. After Dallas lost at home in week two, the Bears now have the longest home winning streak at 7. So that's something to keep an eye on. Um, and then the offense looked good for the most part. Like after the first quarter and a half, they looked good. First quarter and a half, they did not look good, which is weird because those are the plays that you're supposed to look good because those are your script. Well, at least the first drive is your scripted drive, and they don't look good. The scripted drives at all. I mean, they did in against the Texans, but other than that, they haven't looked good on the scripted drives this year. Um, but the two biggest uh initial takeaways that I have were Gervon Dexter uh looks like a dog. I mean, he got a QB sack, he pressured the court, he pressured Stafford a couple times. He was wrecking havoc in the middle. Obviously, the Rams offensive line was hurt, but they were still able to. The offensive line didn't look terrible with how hurt they are. So the fact that Dexter is looking better than he did last year, it's good. And then just we have too many penalties, man. On offense, there was uh I think 8 penalties on offense for like 64 yards and or maybe 50 between 50 and 60 yards, and then we had two personal fouls on defense that were 15 yards each. Well, one was a personal foul, and then one might have been like pass interference. Uh, but the personal foul one was it's a ticky tack call because it was on the sideline, and Brisker technically did hit him out of bounds, but like that's what they that's their mantra is get to the ball and hit the guy. So like he had 1 foot out of bounds. He was barely out of bounds. So I get why it was called. I don't necessarily agree with it after watching the game again today. But when I originally saw it, I agreed with it. But after watching it again today and hearing other people's thoughts, I kind of agree that it wasn't didn't, like it wasn't a good call. I mean, I get why. Again, like I said, I get why it was called, but still. And then offense, they had a lot of false starts, uh, and then an illegal motion that took away a big play, the third down conversion, I think it was. And they had a holding call on a jet sweep to, uh, well, it wasn't really a jet sweep. It was like a wide receiver run to DJ Moore, took away a first down, and then a illegal block in the back at the beginning of a drive on like first down that puts them back to first and 25, which listen, penalties aren't good anyways, but like on first down, you cannot have a penalty because that puts you behind the chains. So all offensive penalties were bad. Defensive penalties were bad. I mean, we play physical on defense, but I mean, I still would like to not see penalties on defense. Um, but yeah, just too many penalties. Like I think I said, it was 10 for 84 today. Uh, the only game where the Bears were under 5 penalties was against the I think in week two they were again under 5 penalties. But the oh or no, not it was against the Colts last week. Sorry, my bad. Every other week they've had 5 or more penalties for a lot of yards. So they gotta fix that, man. That's something they definitely gotta fix.
Yeah, that having that many penalties every week is not going to be a suitable style of play to win games. And I do agree with Joe. I think Gervon Dexter has had such a good start to the season. I'll highlight two other players that played really well today, or against the Rams on Sunday. The first one was Brisker. I was kind of worried about him heading into the season because he would kind of be like injured every other game. He would get hurt, and then he'll come out for a series, come back in, and then he'll miss a game, he'll miss practice. But this season he's been really killing it. He ended the game with 8 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, a sack, and then that game-sealing interception. So kudos to him. And the other player I want to highlight is actually punter Tory Taylor. I was so happy watching him play. He had 5 punts that were 51 yards, 64 yards, 61 yards, 66, and then the 35 yards. Um, so that's 277 total yards with a 55.4 average. And I saw this stat where like that last punt that he did before that punt, the Bears had like a 70 something percent chance, and then after the punt it went up like 10%. So really having a good punter is game changing. And I was so happy that we drafted him and he's been killing it. And then I just want to ask you, Eli, like, what were your thoughts on the Rams versus Bears game?
One second. I want to add. I love Tor Taylor. I love Tor Taylor. I watched a bunch of Iowa football last year because my brother goes there, and I saw a lot of Tor Taylor. So yeah, I'm happy that he's doing the same thing he did in college in the pros for the Bears now. Now, go ahead, Eli. Sorry.
No, it's completely. I agree. Tory Taylor has been everything that we've hoped for. I know when the Bears made the pick, there were a few people that were kind of looking at that pick as a head scratcher, but you've seen through 4 weeks the impact of him when the Bears offense has stalled at times, being able to flip the field and put the Bears opponents in disadvantageous positions. So he's been everything that we've hoped for. Some other players, as you kind of mentioned, Brisker had a great game. I think that's what a lot of Bears were hoping for this season. He's had a pretty strong start to the year there at strong safety. Another player that I think has kind of not flown under the radar since week one is Daryl Taylor. He finally started he kind of flashed again this week against the Rams. So having a dependable edge rusher once again next to Montez Sweat is always a big help. Austin Booker, I think, had a good grief, had a good game against the Rams as well. But overall, I think if we look at it in terms of decision making, I think this was Caleb Williams' best game as a quarterback for the Bears. I mean, the production really wasn't there, but he also didn't make any of the mistakes that he had made in the previous weeks. He was smart with the ball. He took the check down when it was there rather than hunting for the big play. And he just took what the defense gave him and relied on a run game, which, again, we've been screaming for through 4 weeks of the season. DeAndre Swift finally being a contributor to this offense that I think we all kind of knew he could be. It just hadn't been there the first 3 weeks. So good on Shane Waldron to kind of adapt and finally listen to his players and run an offense that works in this league. And especially when you have a rookie quarterback, a strong run game is something that you need for a rookie quarterback to become comfortable in a system. And that's what you saw this week. Caleb Williams being able to rely on that run game and just take the passes as the defense gives him. And I think that kind of was the biggest contributor to this win with time of possession and that kind of thing. But overall, as we kind of had talked before recording this episode, there is a lot to clean up, especially as you mentioned, Joe, you kind of emphasized the penalties. That cannot happen every game. Especially, we kind of lucked out with that one. But it was a positive sign in years past in games that the Bears have had multiple penalties. We usually don't escape with a win on these types of games. So I think it is a plus, especially going against a coach like Sean McVay for as many penalties as we had and being able to come out of there with a win. It's not a sustainable thing, but if we can clean that up and kind of go against these opponents with a more clean game, then I think it bodes well just overall for the Bears. We did kind of talk again. We talked about this outside of this episode, and Joe, you kind of brought it up for the most part. But defensively, I think you were kind of the mindset that this wasn't as strong of a game for the Bears even though we did only allow 18 points. So I want you to give your thoughts on this defense and its performance in week 4. And then Isaac, you can respond after Joe kind of illustrates what he thinks of this defense in week 4 and throughout this year.
Okay. I want to give. I have a question. So for the season, they everyone in that defense stated they were a top 5 unit, right? Correct.
Yes, that did happen. That was a big story point throughout training camp and throughout this preseason.
Well, they have not played like it so far. Their rush defense, after being the first best in the league last year, they are not that good this year. They allow 4.5 yards a carry. They have allowed an average of 121 yards per game on the ground. The only game that they held a team to under 100 yards was the Texans, and Mixon got hurt in that game. In the passing game, they've been fine. I mean, they've had uh, they allow a lot of chunk plays. Like this past week, they allowed 4 or 5 like 20-yard plays, which is just not good. It's not good enough. Um, Overall, they have allowed 778 passing yards, which is 11th fewest in the NFL. Oh, fewest in the NFL, which, okay, that's fine. That's where you think we should be. They're one of the top turnover teams again. They have 8 turnovers. And like I said, they allow uh they allow 18.8 points per game, which is 10th in the NFL. So that's pretty good. But like our run defense needs to be better. Like I think that's gonna be the thing that helps the defense overall from allowing chunk plays. Because if you stop the run, you make them one dimensional. And you haven't been able to stop the run, especially against the Rams, when you knew you needed to stop the run because Kyron Williams was pretty much the only guy on that team to like their only star. And you allowed him to rush for 119 yards and a touchdown and have 4.7 yards of carry, which it's just not, in my opinion, it's not good enough. I know a lot of people are happy the Bears won. I'm happy the Bears won. I just think that the defense, especially the run defense, did not play good. The pass defense, like I said, played fine. They allowed a bunch of chunk plays, which I don't like. They need to fix that. But again, Stafford is, a veteran and he can pick apart some defenses, which just means you have to play a different style of zone against them. Like, not maybe don't press every time, but press a couple times, press a few reps so the receivers don't get so open. And yeah, I mean, I just don't love the way the defense played yesterday, yeah, on Sunday, and really the whole season. They got lucky last week against the Colts. Anthony Richardson did not play well. I think if they had Flacco in the game, that would have been a worse game for them. But since Richardson wasn't accurate at all, then it helped the defense look better. And then obviously in week 1 with Will Levis, hasn't been good all year. It started in week 1, but he hasn't been good all year. And then the game against the Texans, Stroud looked good. Like he didn't throw for 300 yards, but he still looked really good. So I think we have more problems than we want to admit, especially when the defense said they were going to be top 5. And Jalen Johnson did admit that today in a press conference. He said we need to be better, and I totally agree with that.
Yeah, I'll be quick because I basically agree with everything Joe said. I mean, the defense was supposed to be way better than what they are right now. But based off my initial reaction, the reason why this defense hasn't been what we think or what we thought it would be is because the offense hasn't really gotten to rhythm. It's been a lot of like 3-and-outs, frustrations on the offensive side. So if the defense is constantly on the field, they're gonna get tired. It's not gonna be a good situation for the defense. I feel like once our offense starts to get into rhythm and get more cohesive, which I think we're starting to see that, especially again, last game against the Rams, I do believe that the defense is also going to start picking it up and they're going to start performing better. And I want to ask Eli, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think I don't think we have played bad defensively. I think that's the wrong word to use, but there definitely is a lot of potential there that just hasn't been shown yet. We know the type of talent that we have in the secondary. The defensive line has looked better than we had thought coming into this year. Gervon Dexter's kind of breakout campaign so far has gone pretty well. Daryl Taylor was an addition that we didn't think was going to be much of an impact, but it has been so far. And Montez Sweat has been Montez Sweat. So everything is right there for the Bears to be that top five defense that they kind of toted coming into this year. But I do agree with you both that there is a lot of room for improvement and some stuff that they need to clean up. And when you play zone defense, it is tough because you are willing to let a few chunk plays here and there go by. I believe some people use the term bend don't break. So I think that's kind of the philosophy that you have to have with the zone defense and the Tampa style cover two that we run. But at the same time, I do agree that there are certain coverages that we can mix in there, and I think Matt Eberflus is a smart enough defensive mind to realize that. So you kind of saw that in that Texans game. Nico Collins just tore us apart because he was able to get behind the defense, and he's a big enough receiver that he'll jump right over you and he'll just rack up yards after catch and be that middle of the field deep threat that can tear apart a zone defense like that. So I think that was probably the best offense we've faced all year, and you saw the result of that being picked apart by a QB like CJ Stroud. So if it gets down to the line where the Bears potentially could be a wild card team and play these better quarterbacks in the postseason, then that's something defensively that needs to get fixed because you won't be able to run that against elite quarterbacks going into the postseason. So uh, obviously we're not talking about playoffs right now, but that's something to keep in mind down the line. If you want to be that top five defense, then that's an adjustment that the defensive coordinator and Matt Eberflus need to address moving forward. But yeah, I agree
And
that the defense can improve. Joe, go ahead.
sorry, can I ask you a quick question? I don't have the answer. That's why I want to ask you guys. Why do you think the run defense has regressed so much this year? Because they have the same players. There's no one really different besides like Daryl Taylor on the defensive line. I guess the only thing I can think of is we don't have enough big bodies on the defensive line. But other than that, like the backers is the same, secondary is the same. I just don't get why it's worse.
Yeah, I would think I would agree that the big body part is the biggest thing because you take it back to 2018 where you've got guys on that defensive line like Akeem Hicks, who is a big body, Eddie Goldman, Bilal Nichols. Those guys were all massive and they plugged up the interior, so it was hard for teams to run against us. But now you kind of look at our line and I think it's a lot more speed on the interior with guys like Gervon Dexter losing some weight and then DeMarcus Walker and all these guys kind of mixing in. Andrew Billings is really the only true run stuffer in my opinion. So that's probably the biggest reason, but I'm sure there's other reasons as to why they've struggled so far. It can be fixed, but I agree, Joe, that that's probably the biggest thing. And Isaac, did you have any thoughts on
Yeah, I
what?
I also don't know the answer to that question, Joe, and it really is confusing to me because it, like you said, it's kind of the same unit. And if anything, Andrew Billings has played way better than last season. So I don't know if it's just like the coaching that's changed it up a little bit, or I don't know what's going on, but I feel like as the season progresses we'll start to see maybe there's a weak link on the defense that hasn't been doing their part, or maybe it's something else that we haven't quite seen yet on the field that is the cause for this lack of run defense that we had, last season.
Another thing I think that could be a factor is I don't think we've seen a lot of blitzing so far from the squad, so our linebackers are playing farther back. So by the time the running back gets past the line of scrimmage, he's got an additional 3 to 4 yards that wouldn't be there if the linebackers were playing up farther. So maybe that's something that they need to address moving forward as well. But I think that could be another big thing. But
I
um,
mean, he
yeah,
did blitz a couple of times yesterday. Uh, they not run blitz, but they did like pass blitz a couple of times yesterday. You know that. But yeah, I mean, I agree with you.
yeah. Um, it's something that really does need to be fixed moving forward. But I think after this week 4 matchup, there is hope moving forward, and obviously we'll talk about the matchups to come in following episodes, but I think this was a quality win for the Bears that really hasn't. We kind of talked about this in previous episodes that Matt Eberflus hadn't really beaten a quality opponent. And I know that the Rams were banged up and everything like that, but every team has injuries, and I think that's just part of the league. You play who you play when you play them. So it's you don't want to get into the hypotheticals because if you play this Rams team in week 1 or week 2 at full strength, maybe you don't pull one out. And again, you don't want to play the hypothetical game. You play who you play, but beating an elite quarterback like Matthew Stafford, for as depleted as his team was, I think is a testament to where this Bears team is headed. And it is an improvement for Matt Eberflus because there were plenty of moments in which they could have faltered, but they didn't. They stood tall and they got out of there with a quality win at home, as you kind of mentioned earlier, Joe. That's an underrated part of this squad under Matt Eberflus is that if you come into Soldier Field, it's not going to be easy as you think. So, uh, moving forward, there is a lot to improve on, but there's also a lot of good, and we saw that with Caleb Williams with his continued development and everything like this. So, with that, I will ask you guys, kind of through 4 weeks. Obviously, a lot of people expected this Bears offense to come out firing and be this vaunted unit that we all thought it was going to be. But through 4 weeks, and Joe, I will start with you. Is Caleb Williams' development where you want it to be right now? I'll ask you that, Joe.
Um, I think he's I think he's developed each week, which is nice. There's a couple things that I don't quite love. I don't know if this is I don't know if this is actually true or not, but it kind of seems like the coaching is trying to get Caleb to not be as aggressive. If you look at a couple of those passes, uh, this weekend, uh, like DJ Moore, like he could have hit him, like if he zipped it in more and threw it into a tighter window, he could have hit him, for a couple touchdowns, or at least couple big plays. One of them could have been a touchdown, and he didn't. Um, this was happening. There was a lot of speculation last year with that this was happening with Fields too. They were telling him to not. I mean, obviously Fields is different. He turned the ball over a lot more, so like getting those turnovers down was important. But like it just feels like it's happening again, kind of. Now, again, hopefully it's great to see that Caleb didn't turn the ball over this week. We need him to not turn the ball over. But like turning down, not like well, Caleb did turn down a couple big plays this week. He had Rome Dunze wide open on like a go route uh on the in the third quarter when he hit Cole Kmet out of the backfield. That's when Odunze was open on the go route and he didn't hit him, and that could have been a huge gain, probably a touchdown, if not inside the 20-yard line. Bears still ended up scoring a touchdown on that drive, and the drive went longer. So I'll take that. But still, you don't you. I mean, some people were complaining that Caleb didn't have a lot of passing yards this week. That would have helped his passing yards get up. Um, but I think his development is good. He still needs to develop a relationship with DJ be more and more on the field. There was a couple plays this week, like I mentioned, that he missed DJ on, like that one touchdown route that I was talking about, where DJ kind of pulled up and didn't stop, like slow down, and he missed him and didn't zip the ball. And if he zipped the ball in, DJ still probably would have caught it, but he kind of threw it like 5 yards over his head out of bounds. And then in the second half, sorry, in the first half, in the 2 minute drill, in the first half, he missed DJ again. Uh, kind of not the same. It wasn't the same as every out, but he was open. Uh, he could have gotten DJ. And then this one's less of like between them because DJ was wide open on this on the play that Rome he threw to Rome in the end zone where everyone was saying it could have been a hold. DJ was right wide open on the other side. I mean that's different though because I think Caleb he read that and was like, I'm gonna go to my guy Rome instead of, that's fine, whatever. You pick and choose who you want to go to. He missed somebody, but whatever. He did have a nice touchdown to DJ though. Like that touchdown to DJ was a nice throw in the back of the end zone against a linebacker, but like his connection with DJ obviously isn't there yet. Everyone can see it. Um, but overall, I think he's done a really good job developing. I Obviously it's not done yet. I I feel like by the end of this year, especially and by week 10 when they face the first division opponent, will be where we can like rely on his arm more. Like we saw it last week. He threw 52 times. No one wants to see that again. But we saw he could throw for 350 yards when needed. We didn't need that this week, but going forward, I would like to see him throw more, not throw more, but get more yards and not turn down big plays. And also, I would like the Bears to stop running screen passes because they don't. I know we've talked about this last week, but they did run a lot more, not a lot more, but they ran more screen passes that did not work for no reason. Like they ran a tight end screen on third down to Cole Kmet. That just doesn't stop running that play. It doesn't work. I love Cole. He's a great tight end, but he's not gonna get 4 yards on a tight end screen when you could have switched him on Rome uh spots with him and Rome probably would have gotten those 4 yards. Cole just isn't that guy. Like I get it, he's big and you hope he could break tackles, but like it's just I just don't like that. But other than that, uh Caleb been developing really well.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And for me, aside from the coaching, I do really think that Caleb Williams has done a great job so far. I'm really impressed with him. Um, this guy put out the Caleb Williams passer rating by week this season. In week 1, he was 55.7, and then he kind of went down a little bit, 51 against the Texans, and then he shot up to 80.8 against the Colts week 3, and then last week against the Rams, he had a 106.6 passer rating. So it's good to see that he's improving not only on the field but by a statistical measure as well. And I'm writing an article right now on like concern levels for several Bears offensive players, which will probably be, published by the time everyone's listening to this. But this is what I wrote about Caleb Williams because he's shown improvement each week, right? But the mistakes he's made, it's rookie mistakes. Like it's the week 1 sack that he took against I think it was Joseph Day, where it was a really bad sack, but he's just kind of figuring out that, in the NFL, these guys can run faster, could get to you quicker. Um, and then I think it was against the Texans where he had that across the field interception that he just shouldn't have thrown. That's something that is just it's better to learn that this doesn't work now than later when it's more, you know, it's higher stakes. And then the key point that I want to mention is that, his missteps are stemming from inexperience, right? So he's just learning what's working, what's not working. But his strengths, like what he's showing, that's really good that I like to see from him are like his processing speed, his anticipation, and his pocket awareness. These are things that you can't teach an NFL quarterback, right? Like we've had to deal with Fields not having the pocket awareness, so to say, or processing speed through a couple seasons in the NFL, and we're already seeing major improvement from Williams. I mean, this guy in that play and touchdown pass to DJ Moore, he was looking first on the left side for Gerald Everett on a slant. And as soon, like literally when I'm watching the play, as soon as he notices that Everett's covered up, immediately turns his body, his eyes to the right side, and he sees us like us. He's Moore's open, but just like by a sliver, and he throws it perfectly to him. I mean, that was such a good play. That's one of the best plays I've seen from Williams this season. So I'm definitely super excited about Williams, and I think that each week he's just going to get better as this offense learns how to work with each other, how eventually Waldron's going to get it together. I hope he does, but I'm hoping he does, but I think he will. Um, and then the running game's going to start working, so it's going to open up just the entire offense and it's going to make life for Williams easier. The only thing I'm really nervous about right now is the offensive line because like unfortunately, Tevin Jenkins, who was supposed to be our best offensive lineman, hasn't been as good this season. And he did suffer that rib injury against the Rams. Darnell Wright hasn't really looked like the first round top 10 pick that, we were hoping he would be. And then Braxton Jones was getting bullied on Sunday against Jared Verse. I feel like every other play, Verse was almost about to sack Williams because he just dominated Braxton Jones. So we'll see how the offensive line does going forward. I did want to toss it to you, Eli. What are your thoughts on Caleb Williams this season?
Yeah, so I'll give my thoughts on Williams, and then we'll discuss this offensive line much more expanded. But Williams, I think the promising thing with him, which we have not seen in previous quarterbacks for the Bears, is just the fact that he is willing to distribute the ball to all of his weapons. He's willing to take the check down, look for the big pass, but he's getting the ball out to Cole Kmet, to Rome Odunze, to DJ Moore, to Keenan Allen when he's healthy, and everyone that's just a contributor for this offense. So he's willing to spread the ball. He is going through his progressions, going through his reads. Everything is improved week by week. So his development for me is right there on the right track, despite all of the coaching errors through week 4. And I do think that Shane Waldron showed promise this week just for the simple fact of him being able to listen to his players and have that positive feedback and adapt it into a real game. And he took that into consideration. So I think moving forward, Shane Waldron for me still has a lot to prove, but at the same time, I think I am hopeful for his progression in this Bears offense. But uh, circling back to the offensive line, a lot of people, whether they meant it or not, they said that the Bears' run game looked better without Tevin Jenkins. And there may be some truth in that at the same time, but also I think Tevin Jenkins can still be a guy for the Bears. Now, I won't say that if he has another good game, the Bears are going to start extension talks again, that kind of thing. But I think he's just, there's something there with this situation to where Tevin Jenkins has just had a regression period through 4 weeks. But it does need to improve. But I think this game, there were a lot of plays to where you were hopeful for the improvement of this Bears offensive line. And then again, talking about Braxton Jones, as you kind of brought up, to me, I think I have seen enough from Braxton Jones. I think he is what he is at this point. And if you're going up against a strong edge rusher like Jared Verse, whose strength is strength, Braxton Jones just cannot handle the bull rush. If he's going against a strong edge defender, he's going to lose that rep 9 out of 10 times. And that's not something you can have out of a left tackle, which is arguably your most important position for your offensive line. So I think you can kind of circle in the Bears looking at left tackle in next year's draft, um, which is unfortunate because Braxton Jones is a good player. And I think if the Bears want to keep him around, he can be a great swing tackle for Chicago. But um, Joe, I will kind of toss it to you. Just your thoughts broadly on this Bears offensive line in week 4 and throughout the entire season. What do you think moving forward? And again, overall, just your thoughts on the O line.
Listen, I'll bring up Tevin first because he got hurt and you mentioned him. He, like you said, hasn't looked good this year. Who knows? It might be just from, all the injuries that he's had. Like he injured his neck last year and people are saying he hasn't looked the same since then. So maybe that's part of it. He just hasn't looked good this year, and it sucks because he was when he was healthy before he was dominant. And I figured that he'd be dominant this year, and we at least get a running game going that way. And he hasn't been. Running game has suffered. I think you said it. People are saying that the Bears running game looked better without Tevin Jenkins. You definitely said that. So I'm repeating what you said. Remember. But yeah, I mean, it looked really good. I mean, there's still a couple uh issues like uh not particularly in the run game, but just on the offensive line on Sunday. Like Nate Davis had a bad penalty. Coleman Shelton again kept getting put into Caleb's lap, which you cannot have because that means Caleb cannot step up and step through the pressure, and he's going to get sacked. Like you said, Braxton uh gave up a lot of pressure, and Gervon should have had at least two sacks, but they both got taken away a because of defensive holding, and then he should have had another sack that Caleb was able to break out of. So he had to be upset that three sacks got taken away from him. Um, but yeah, the offensive line just did not look good. Like for some of the pass reps, they looked fine. Caleb was hanging in that pocket really well. Well, other pass reps, they did not look. They looked like what they looked like the first three weeks, which isn't good. I think now if when Ryan Bates is healthy, and if they put him in center, he plays better. I don't know how long of a contract we gave him, but if it's more than just this year, I guess we don't have to look for center draft. But I think if it's not for more than just if the contract is for just this year, I think the first position we have to target in the draft is center because that's going to help Caleb just not face as much pressure if it's not coming through the middle almost every single play. Um, but yeah, overall offensive line this week wasn't much different. Uh, they opened up running lanes, which was nice to see. I mean, also I want to mention that it looked like DeAndre Swift actually saw the holes this week and ran through them, which he hasn't been doing the first 3 weeks. So yeah, this overall not good offensive line, which I'm surprised by after last year when they weren't like bottom 10 like they are this year. They were at least, 20th to 15 to 20.
Yeah, it's just there's been, I would say there was improvement this week, but as a whole on the year, it's been a disappointment. So it's just one of those things that we'll have to keep track of, and maybe once we get Ryan Bates back, he can slide into center and shore up this O line. And who knows what the plan is with Tevin moving forward. I'm sure if he's healthy, they'll slide him back in as a starter, but um, it did show promise that the Bears were able to get a run game despite injuries, and maybe they find some consistency after this week on that offensive front. But regardless of all of the issues that the Bears have faced through 4 weeks, they did come out of week 4 at a record of 2-2. So I think they are right where we kind of all thought they would be. I don't think any of us would have picked a Colts loss and a Rams win before the year. But the record is the record. So 2-2 going into next week against Carolina, I think is a good spot to be in, as well as a favorable slate coming up for Chicago. So unless you guys have anything else, I will conclude this episode. But I think that is going to do it for this episode of the Bear Down Buzz podcast. Once again, the Bears defeat the LA Rams by a score of 24-18, improved to 2-2 with a matchup against the Carolina Panthers, which is a bit of a revenge game for Carolina, I guess, as we've kind of fleeced them in the past with past trades and that kind of thing. But Joe, did you have something?
The only thing that I was going to say was please like, comment, share, leave a review, help us grow. We appreciate it greatly.
For sure. We've got a TikTok page, I believe, now, if you want to plug that, Joe.
It's the same as the podcast's name. So it's the Bear Down Buzz podcast TikTok. Yeah. Drop a follow. Reels it's TikToks from the podcast, but drop a follow.
For sure. Yeah. Go like our shorts. Go follow us on TikTok. Follow us on Twitter. Everywhere you can find us. Go watch us. Go repost everything. Listen on Spotify. All of your different streaming services. We're everywhere. So, with that being said, I think that's going to do it for this episode of the Bear Down Buzz podcast. We will preview a matchup against the Carolina Panthers next week. Next episode rather, but facing the Carolina Panthers next week. But I think that is going to do it for this episode of the Bear Down Buzz podcast. We will see you on Thursday to preview that matchup against the Carolina Panthers. We'll see you next time.